Okay, the boy was shaking when he ran into the diner. He couldn't have been more than 8. His face was red, eyes wet with tears, and he could barely breathe between sobs. He hit my grandma, he cried out. Every fork in that diner stopped mid-air. At the counter sat 5 men, leather vests, tattoos, heavy boots, the kind that made people whisper when they walked in. They were bikers, and nobody usually messed with them. But when they heard that little boy cry, they all turned their heads in the same direction, and the look in their eyes said everything. Hey everyone, welcome to your channel name, where we share real stories that touch the heart and remind us what kindness really means. If this story moves you, please take a moment to subscribe, like, and leave a comment about what kindness means to you. Your words help these stories reach more people who might need them today. Now, let's get into the story. It was a quiet Saturday morning in a small town in Kentucky. The local diner, Martha's Place, sat right off the highway, the kind of spot where truckers, travelers, and old friends gathered over coffee that never seemed to run out. That morning, the air smelled like bacon and biscuits. The jukebox played an old country song, and the doorbell jingled every few minutes with another regular coming in. At the counter, 5 bikers sat together, men with names like Bear, Moose, and Tiny, though none of them were exactly tiny. They were part of a local riding group that spent weekends doing charity runs for kids and veterans. To anyone looking from the outside, they looked rough. Big beards, worn leather jackets, loud laughter. But everyone in town knew these were good men. Then the door slammed open. A little boy stumbled in, clutching his backpack, his small hands trembling. His voice cracked when he tried to speak. "Some man hit my grandma," he said. "She fell down. I don't know what to do." The room went dead silent. Martha, the owner, rushed from behind the counter. "Sweetheart, what happened?" she asked, gently taking his hand. The boy sniffled. "There's a man next door," he yelled at her cause she told him to slow down when he was driving. Then he hit her, and now she's on the ground. Bear put down his coffee cup so hard it rattled. He stood up, and one by one, so did the others. "Where's she at, kid?" Bear asked. The boy pointed out the window toward the small white house across the street. "There," he said quietly. Without another word, the 5 men walked out of the diner. Across the street, an older woman lay on the front lawn, clutching her cheek. A man mid-30s, red-faced and angry, was pacing nearby, muttering under his breath. When he saw the bikers coming, he froze. Bear knelt beside the woman. "Ma'am, you okay?" he asked softly. She nodded weakly. "I'll be all right," she whispered. He just hit me." The man shouted, "Mind your own business," and took a step forward. But Moose, who stood nearly 6'6", moved between him and the woman. "Buddy," he said in a calm, steady voice, "you just made it our business." The man tried to argue, but when 5 leather-clad bikers surrounded him, he realized he'd picked the wrong fight. One of the bikers called 911, while another helped the woman sit up. The boy ran to her, crying, and she wrapped her arms around him. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said softly. "Grandma's okay now." When the police arrived, the man was handcuffed and taken away. The bikers didn't cheer, didn't threaten, didn't brag. They just stood there, quiet and protective, until they were sure she was safe. Back at the diner, the woman, whose name was Dorothy, sat in a booth with an ice pack on her face. The boy Eli sat beside her, holding her hand. The bikers didn't go back to their seats. Instead, they sat across from her, talking gently. "Do you have anyone nearby?" Bear asked. "My daughter's 2 towns over," Dorothy said. "Eli and I were just on our way to visit her tomorrow." "Guess plans changed." Bear smiled kindly. "Well, we'll make sure you still get there safe." And they did. The next morning, 5 motorcycles rumbled down the road, with a bright red pickup truck in the middle. Dorothy sat inside the truck, Eli beside her, smiling through the window. The bikers surrounded them the entire way, like an escort. Other drivers slowed down and stared, but the bikers didn't care. They were protecting their own now. When they reached her daughter's house, Dorothy stepped out, tears in her eyes. "Why would you do all this for us?" she asked. Bear looked down at the boy, then back at her. Because someone should, he said simply. Kindness doesn't need a reason. Eli hugged him, his small arms barely wrapping around the man's waist. Thank you, mister, he said. Bear patted his back gently. You take care of your grandma, okay? Weeks passed. Life went back to normal for the bikers. They went on rides, held fundraisers, and showed up at the diner every weekend. But one Saturday morning, when they rolled in, something new was waiting for them. A hand-painted sign stood in front of the diner. It read, "Kindness lives here, dedicated to the men who helped my grandma." And underneath, taped to the sign, was a drawing. A child's drawing of 5 motorcycles parked outside a little white house. Eli had made it himself. Martha smiled as she handed Bear a cup of coffee. That boy's been asking about y'all every week, she said. Says when he grows up, he wants to ride too, not to look tough, but to do good. Bear chuckled. Then we'll save him a jacket. The story spread through town. People started talking about it at the grocery store, at church, at school. Neighbors began checking on each other more. Kids started holding doors for strangers. And the bikers, well, they became something of local heroes, though they never asked to be. One night, a news crew even came by to interview them. Why do you think your story touched so many hearts? The reporter asked. Bear thought for a moment before answering. Because people forget that kindness still exists, he said. We live in a world where it's easier to walk away than to help. But kindness, it doesn't have to be big. It just has to be real. Months later, the diner held a community event, Kindness Day. There was free food, live music, and dozens of families who'd been helped by small acts of generosity that all started with one moment outside the diner. Dorothy was there too, smiling with a faint scar on her cheek but joy in her eyes. She stood beside Eli, who wore a tiny black leather vest that said, Junior Rider. When Bear and the others walked in, the crowd clapped. But Bear just lifted a hand and said, No applause, folks. Just keep it going. Be kind to the next person who needs it. That's all the thanks we need. That night, as the sun went down and the motorcycles faded into the distance, Dorothy whispered to her daughter, I used to think kindness was rare. But maybe it's just quiet waiting for a chance to speak. And in that little town, it did speak. Through the rumble of engines. Through a boy's drawing. Through every door held open and every stranger helped. Because kindness isn't just a word, it's an action, a decision, a ripple that starts small and spreads farther than we can ever see. So the next time you see someone in need, don't wait for someone else to act. Be that person. Because one simple act of kindness can change more than a moment, it can change a life. Thank you for watching today's story on Your Channel Name. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe, because when you do, you're helping kindness reach even more people who need a reminder that goodness still exists.